setting boundaries is hard. It's really, really hard, and I acknowledge that it's hard, but I think that a lot of the conversation that has happened in recent times on the internet surrounding boundaries has to do with setting them for yourself and standing firm in them, and that's it. And I think that's a really important skill that a lot of people lack, but I think something that we don't talk about is understanding how to respect other people's boundaries and how to accept when somebody sets a boundary with you, because it's really hard for those people who have autism and ADHD and other mental illnesses that might make them prone to rejection sensitive dysphoria, where if you are rejected, or if you're perceiving something as rejection, it can cause a really bad spiral and a variety of horrible symptoms. And it can cause you to push people away. It can cause you to lash out. It can cause you to feel a lot of self-loathing and inadequacy. Oh my god. There's a median there, sir. That guy was driving like crazy. Anyway, for those of us who have that rejection-sensitive dysphoria, being rejected can feel like the end of the world and can cause us to act in really irrational, unreasonable ways that can really hurt people, and as well as like hurting ourselves. And having somebody set a boundary with you can feel like rejection and can activate that part of your brain that has the rejection sensitive dysphoria. And so then when somebody is setting a boundary with you and all they're trying to say is, hey, maybe there's this thing that you did that made me uncomfortable, or maybe there is this thing that I just want to address between the two of us in our relationship that like I'm not okay with, and all that somebody is trying to do is to set that boundary and make the space between the two of you safe for them. But if you have rejection sensitive dysphoria, what it can feel like is that they're attacking your character, or they're making accusations about the type of person that you are or what your intentions are. And that can cause a really, really horrible negative reaction from the person with, the neurodivergence. And, it also comes into play with the defiance that a lot of people with ADHD and autism experience. I don't remember what the word is, but when somebody tells you to do something and then you are less inclined to do it because they're telling you to do it, that is a symptom of ADHD and autism. And I think that's the other thing, is that when somebody is setting a boundary with somebody who is neurodivergent, it can feel like they're telling you what to do. And then your immediate reaction, if you're not a person who has done the work to counteract this reaction, would be to lash out at them and to do the opposite, and to tell them that you're going to do whatever you want, or to act in a way where you're going to do whatever you want, or again to feel like they're accusing you of not being respectful of boundaries or not being willing to respect boundaries, when that's not what it is at all. Somebody setting a boundary with you is not an accusation. It's not a judgment of your character or an attack on your character, when done properly. Of course, some people will find a way to make it an attack on your character, but people will find a way to make anything an attack on your character if they're determined enough. Anyway, I just think that something that a lot more people should be doing work on is how to accept boundaries, and that's something that I've been doing a lot of work in therapy and in my day-to-day life, is working on when somebody sets a boundary with me, understanding what that boundary is, understanding that it might be sort of uncomfortable to have somebody tell you that you might be doing something that's making them uncomfortable, or that you might have alluded to doing something that would make them uncomfortable or something like that. It's really hard to accept that from somebody, but I have been doing a lot of work to be able to be that person that people feel like they can come to me and they feel like they can approach me and tell me, hey, you did this thing that made me really upset, and this is my boundary. I need you to not do it again, or else, this is how I'm going to react. I'm working on being able to take that and accept it for what it is, and accept that at the end of the day, somebody wouldn't be setting a boundary with me if they weren't interested in having me in their life. If somebody tells you, hey, there's this thing that you do that makes me feel upset or uncomfortable or that triggers me, they're doing that because they would like to continue hanging out with you, and it's going to be hard or impossible to hang out with you if you continue doing that. And so that is why they're telling you, is because what they're saying is not, I'm attacking your character. It's not, you're violating me and you're doing it on purpose or anything like that. What they're telling you is, hey, I like you, I respect you, I care about you, and I want us to be able to comfortably hang out with one another and for us to both feel safe when we're together. And you can make that possible by respecting this boundary that I'm setting. And as uncomfortable as it is, when you learn how to take that in stride and how to tell the person, thank you for being willing to talk to me about this, and for, respectfully telling me that I was making you feel that way, and thank you for being gracious and allowing me to make that mistake and, have like a conversation with me about it, and I respect you as well, and I want you to feel comfortable. So here's the effort that I'm going to make. Here's the behavior that I'm going to change. And then doing it. And actually respecting the boundary and actually changing your behavior. And that if you're having rejection sensitive dysphoria or other rejection related symptoms or reactions, that you are able to process those in another way. And maybe with a therapist, or maybe with... I just realized my camera has a level. That's cool. That's really cool. If to process the rejection sensitive dysphoria with a therapist, or in a journal, or in some other way, so that you can sort of process the rejection. Because at least for me, once I have processed the rejection response and the abandonment response that has come up from this, it's a matter of time before I am over it. And that I'm like, okay, I'm not feeling those rejection symptoms anymore. I'm not feeling those trauma responses and those trigger responses. And I can reasonably understand why this person was asking this of me, and I can act accordingly now. It doesn't take very much for me to feel that way. So I think an important skill for a lot of people to learn would be, instead of reacting on your initial feelings of rejection when somebody sets a boundary with you, to let them know that you're grateful that they were willing to talk to you about that, and then to go process any emotions that might have to do with you and not with them, separately from them. Because, let's face it, if you are having a trauma response to a person setting a boundary with you, you're not having a response to them setting the boundary with you. You're having a response to the way that the people that were influential in your life when you were a child would talk to you, and the way that they would behave around you, and that they would discipline you and scold you. And that when they were setting a boundary, quote unquote setting a boundary, what they were actually do was rejecting you and was making you feel inferior. And that's what you're actually reacting to. And that has everything to do with you and nothing to do with them. Because if you were a person that was raised by really well-educated parents who loved you and, raised you to be a well-adjusted person, even if you were neurodivergent, you wouldn't feel a rejection to somebody setting a boundary with you. If you were raised in a healthy household where your parents set boundaries with you as well as letting you set boundaries, then you wouldn't have a rejection response when somebody set a boundary with you. Because for me personally, my mom didn't have any boundaries with me. We didn't have boundaries with each other. And the only time that she would set a boundary with me, quote unquote, again, set a boundary, was to punish me, or to scold me for being too nosy, or, stepping out of line, so to speak, speaking out of turn, like that sort of thing. And I wasn't allowed to have boundaries with my mother. I wasn't allowed to have privacy. I wasn't allowed to have certain things she couldn't look through or touch. I wasn't allowed to have certain topics of my life that I didn't talk to her about, secrets of any kind. I wasn't allowed to have any privacy, and therefore was not allowed to have any boundaries with her. And so now, as an adult, I really struggle with understanding other people's boundaries and understanding that in a healthy relationship, you have boundaries with each other. There is no healthy relationship where the two of you don't have boundaries. Any relationship where you don't have boundaries, you are going to feel exposed all the time. You're going to feel obligated to tell this person every single thing about you. You're going to feel like if they're doing something that upsets you, then you can't tell them. You can't address it. You are going to be rejected, or you're going to be in an argument if you do tell them that you need a boundary. And again, let's face it, most of the time with those people who are not allowing you to feel comfortable setting boundaries, they are going to have an adverse reaction when you try to do that. And they're going to take it as a personal attack, which again, that's part of why I think that we need to be learning how to accept people's boundaries as well as to set our own. Because when somebody else freaks out at you because you're setting a boundary with them, I mean, that's going to discourage you from ever talking to anybody at all about your feelings ever. So it's all about, just understanding that you can set boundaries and, people are not necessarily going to accept them or respect them. And, whatever, you need to be able to stand up for yourself. You need to know what is comfortable for you and what isn't. You need to know when lines are being crossed and how you're going to react to that. All of those things are true, but all of those things are true for everyone. And I heard somebody say once that with all of the therapy speak that has, been floating around on social media, people take it in a very individualistic way. And they're thinking, I am worthy. I am lovable. I need to understand these self-affirmations. I need to have self-respect, self-love. I need to be able to set boundaries with other people and to be able to hold space for myself and keep my peace and all of this shit. But they're not seeing it as we as a collective need to be able to do that. Other people also deserve to be able to do that. And they're not understanding that when somebody else is holding that space for themselves, that could then affect your life. If your friends if you're learning how to set boundaries and that's the only thing that you're focused on, and then your friends are suddenly learning how to set boundaries and then they're setting boundaries with you that you don't like, you're still going to have that adverse reaction. You're going to get upset. You're going to get defensive. You're going to go into childhood trauma mode, and you're going to destroy every relationship in your life. And I know that that's true because that is an experience that I have had again and again and again. Most of my relationships, the reason that they have failed is because I viewed setting boundaries as rejection. That's my car making that noise. I don't know why it does that. So that when people would set boundaries with me and tell me that I was being overbearing, I was being controlling, I was being, I was too quick to anger, I was taking my anger out on them, I would raise my voice, I would, being controlling is like probably the biggest one, or being overbearing. And people would tell me that, and I took it as a personal attack, and I was too scared to face those things about myself. So I would get upset that other people were addressing it, and I would push them away, or I would freak out, or I would bury it, or I would gaslight them, or I would do any number of things to avoid what I should have been doing, which was taking accountability and trying to understand why I was feeling the need to be so controlling of everything and everybody around me at all times. Because that is the reality of what I was feeling, is like I had to have control of everything. And I know now, again, through therapy work, I know that it's because I feel like if I'm not controlling things, then they are going to go out of control. And I can't stand the idea of things being up in the air because of traumas that I have had. And the solution to that is not that I need to grab onto every single thing with both hands and grip it until my knuckles are white and never let go. That's not the answer to feeling like my life is out of control. And it is especially not true of the way that I should treat other people. You can't control other people. You can't control how much they love you. You can't control how they love you, whether they love you at all, whether they respect you. You can't control whether they want you in their life or how much of you they want in their life or how they're willing to love you. You can't control any of that. The only thing that you can control is your actions and therefore your impact on other people. And if I had known and understood that before, there are a lot of things that would have happened differently in my life. And my relationships would probably have been a lot stronger and lasted for a lot longer. But because I was traumatized, I just didn't understand any of those things. I didn't even know that I was being controlling. I genuinely didn't know. But now I know, right? And I know that part of not being controlling of other people is letting them have boundaries. And understanding that if I don't want to accept a boundary, if I don't want to adhere to a boundary that somebody is setting, then I don't have to. But then I should express that to that person, and that they then have the right to not have me in their life, or to limit the amount that I'm in their life. And that's okay. And that's an okay situation when you have that conversation. It's an okay reaction. And I've had to have this conversation with people before. It's okay for me to not accept a boundary. And it's okay for anyone to not accept a boundary. If somebody is telling you, I need you to do this and this and this if we're going to be able to hang out, and it's not something that is within your skill set, it's not something you're willing to do, something you're willing to do the work to do, or the relationship is not worth working on in that way to you, that is fine and that is human. There are going to be people in your life that you don't care to work on certain aspects of yourself, or, you know, there are fundamental parts of yourself that you're not interested in changing that are not going to align with their values and with their boundaries. And that's okay. But then you need to be able to accept that those people might not want you in their life. And that if it's a true boundary, and if they're really working on being able to set boundaries, that they will say, okay, well then we can't be friends. And that they won't compromise that for you, which is something that you should not expect for them to compromise that for you. So anyway, lots of thoughts. All that I'm saying is, I think that working on both sides of boundary setting is really, really important. Why are there like 100 fucking frat dudes walking into my gym right now? Luckily, I'm just doing core and cardio today, so I don't need new machines. You need to be working on both sides of boundaries. You need to be working on both sides of it. And, if you're only working on setting your own boundaries, then the work that you're doing is not about maintaining long-term relationships. It's not about being able to properly love the people around you. And it's not about improving your relationship with yourself. If you're only working on being able to set boundaries, and again, being able to keep your own peace, or, you know, to cut toxic people out of your life, and that's like the only thing you're focusing on, what you're really doing is trying to get the world around you to cater to you. And if you're working on all of those things, because people do deserve self-love, obviously, and to be able to set boundaries, but if you're working on that hand in hand with learning to accept other people's limits and their boundaries and the limits that might exist within your relationship, well, then that is how you're going to heal. That's the only way you're going to heal. If you have attachment issues, if you have abandonment issues, if you have problems with rejection, sensitive dysphoria, the only way you are going to heal is by learning not to take those things as a personal attack. And the way to do that is to have inherent value for yourself that can't be washed away by the way that other people perceive you. Because the day that you stop caring how people perceive you is the day that you will stop taking boundaries and other things that are not, you know, meant negatively toward you as rejection. And when you start not taking those things as rejection, then you can have healthy relationships with the people around you. And it's this great self-fulfilling prophecy, except in a positive way. I know that term is used a lot in a negative way, but the more that you are loving yourself, the more that you will love other people, the more that other people will love you. And that cycle will continue forever and ever and ever. And if your goal, like mine, is to be able to love people, to maintain interpersonal relationships, and to not hurt people the way that your abuser hurt you, then that is the only way to do it. You have to build a foundation of love for yourself that's not going anywhere, that is made of stone and that lives there. And that no matter how much you may be angry at yourself, no matter how bad of a mistake you may make, no matter if somebody that you love and care about looks you in the eyes and says a lot of really horrible things to you, whether or not they're true, which has happened to me and happened to me recently with a lot of things that were true and some that weren't, you need to have that foundation of I am worthy, I am lovable, I'm allowed to love myself, I'm allowed to accept love from other people. That needs to exist, and that needs to be impenetrable. And, on top of that, you may feel like you're making a lot of progress, and then maybe, the negative situations, the mistakes, whatever, maybe that crushes some of that and washes some of that away. But no matter what happens, that first layer has to be there and has to be not going anywhere. It has to not be affected or determined by how other people perceive you. And then when somebody is setting a boundary with you and you're getting the rejection response and the abandonment response, you are able to still go, I am worthy, I am loved, I am lovable, I am allowed to love myself, I'm allowed to accept love from other people. And when you can still feel those things despite the rejection, the trauma response will stop. It will stop making you feel like you are not worthy because of this perceived rejection, because of the way that you perceive somebody else to be perceiving you, which is insane. It's the most insane thing a human brain does, is just going, I think that this person is thinking this thing about me, and so I'm going to freak the fuck out and I'm going to push them away, or I'm going to treat them like shit, or I'm going to act exactly the way that my abuser did, or whatever. Like, it's so insane because you're doing all of that based off of a feeling about a feeling. Like, you can't do that forever. You can't hold yourself to that standard, that imaginary standard that somebody might have for you, that is not ever clearly defined. It's not ever written. It's not ever spoken, because it doesn't actually exist. And if somebody does have some weird secret standard for how you should be acting, how you should be reacting, and how you should be loving people, that person is weird. And you don't need to adhere to their made up rules. So you need to stop trying to guess whether or not someone is rejecting you, and whether or not somebody is perceiving you as being a bad person or being a fuck up. You need to stop worrying about it, because no matter what, whether they are or they aren't, at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with your reality. And that is something that I have really realized recently, is that my reality has gotten to a point where it is a lot more solid. And I know the things that are true about me that are positive. And I have always known that there are negative things about me. And only more recently did I start to understand what they actually were, and the truth and the reality of what my flaws were. But I have also started to learn the truth and the reality of my pros, if you will, my positive traits, because I have them. And when you start to learn that, it just makes it so much easier to brush off the things that somebody says about you and that somebody feels about you. And if somebody is making a bunch of assumptions about the way that you feel and the person that you are and the actions that you're taking and whether or not you're growing and whether or not you're changing, and if somebody is making any sort of assumptions about you at all, when you have that solid base and that solid reality about who you are and about your worthiness and your lovability, you can then let those things wash off of you. And you can take accountability for your actions at the same time. That can exist. And when somebody is setting a healthy boundary, you absolutely should. But you can do that and also love yourself. You can make mistakes and still love yourself. You don't have to stop loving yourself just because you make mistakes, even bad ones. even ones that you absolutely cannot take back, even ones that somebody might never forgive you for. You are still allowed to love yourself. You do not have to hate yourself because you did those things. Should you hold yourself accountable? Should you listen to what that person is saying to you? Should you apologize if they give you the opportunity? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you should try to understand what you did wrong and why you did it and how you can make sure to not hurt somebody in that way again, or do your very best to not hurt somebody in that way again. But you can do that without punishing yourself. There is no reason to punish yourself. You are going to make yourself miserable, and to what end? You can't heal in misery. Can healing be hurtful? Yes. Can it be sad? Can it make you angry? Absolutely. But you shouldn't be fucking wanting to slit your wrists the entire time that you're attempting to heal. Why are you have no motivation to heal somebody that you hate. And I used to say that all the time. Why would I pick somebody up off the ground that I can't fucking stand? Because I hated myself. And if anybody else that I hated was sitting there saying, I need you to walk me through step by step until I am healed, until I'm better, until I'm happy, I would say, why would I do that for you? And so you have to love yourself so that you are motivated to make yourself better. And when you are making yourself better, and when you are healing, and when you are happy, that is when you are going to be able to accept the boundaries of people around you, and people are going to notice. People will notice, people will be drawn to you, and people will want to keep you around. I invited a group of people from my work to my birthday party in January of 2023, almost a full year ago. I invited a bunch of people that I was not very close to, but that I knew from work, and I invited them to come to my house and celebrate me, and they did. And I fed them all pizza, and we listened to music, and we laughed, and we told stories, and it was really, really fun. And in 2 weeks, I'm throwing a party like that again. It is going to be the 1 year anniversary. My birthday, my 24th birthday. But it'll be the 1 year anniversary since I invited those people to my house. And almost every single person that came to that party is coming to this one. That is the first time in my entire life that I've had a group of people that is willing to celebrate me twice on my birthday. The first time in my entire life that I have kept a group of people as friends for a year with no signs of stopping, with no drama, with no jealousy and anger, without any resentment, and without feeling like everything is going to fall apart at any moment. And that is only possible because I have started to see the lovability within myself. And that people have noticed, people have been drawn to me, and people have begun to love me the way that I need to be loved. Because I have acknowledged that I am worth loving. I'm gonna wrap this up really quick. My TED Talk here. I didn't mean to talk for 30 minutes, but I have a lot of thoughts, clearly. And I'm really trying to have these thoughts and understand them, and to think deeply and to introspect, but to not try and intellectualize my feelings away. Because I can understand why the feelings are there, and I can understand that really deeply, and I can understand the root, and I can understand the steps I need to take. But understanding all of those things does not equal healing. It is not necessarily a step toward healing. And that is a really big mistake that I've made in the past. Oh, I'm trying to get my pre-workout in. So, I have all of these thoughts. I consider myself a very introspective and thoughtful person. I'm very self-aware, but self-awareness does not equal being a better person. You can be very self-aware and still make really bad, fucked up mistakes. And you can be self-aware and still be a fucking asshole. And just because you know about the symptoms doesn't fucking make them go away. So I am trying to sit with my feelings and to let myself feel them, and to keep my foundation of I am worthy and I am lovable. And I know those things to be true. And somebody that I care about very, very much, that I will care about forever and ever and ever, no matter what happens, recently said a lot of things to me that made a lot of assumptions about my character based on the person that I was over a year ago. And the assumptions were fair, in my opinion. And everything that she said to me was 100% justified. And she has every right to say and feel those things. And I would never ask her not to. I would never say that it's unfair. I would never try to change her mind about that unless she asked me to try and prove myself or to redeem myself with her. But the thing is, those things can be fair, and it can be fair for her to feel that way, while I also know that they are no longer true. And both of those things can exist at the same time. And that's a really hard thing to learn and to deeply understand. It's an easy thing to say, and it makes sense, and it is smart, it is wise, it is thoughtful, but it is not as easy to process as it is to intellectualize. That she can feel that way about me, and that can be okay and fair, and I will not ever ask her to process her emotions differently if she's never ready for that. But at the same time, just because she does not feel love toward me doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to feel love toward myself. And doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to consider those things that she said about me to be untrue. Because the way that other people perceive me is not fact. Even the way that I perceive myself is not fact. I'm gonna go into the gym. It's core and cardio today. So I'm gonna do about 30 minutes of core workouts. Probably some planks, core circuits, and crunches. Maybe some crunches. Don't love crunches, but I'm getting better at them. Or sit-ups, I don't know the difference. And then I'm gonna do about 30 minutes of cardio. I've been really enjoying sitting on the bike because it's a lot more mindless than walking on the treadmill. So I'm probably going to do that, and maybe watch a little YouTube video of my my current favorite white boys of the month. Well, one of them is Hispanic. My boys of the month. I have so much love in my heart right now. And despite everything that has been said to me in the past few days, and every nasty thing that I have thought about myself as a result of that in the past few days, I have also, on top of that, as an added layer, been feeling a lot of love and a lot of hope and light. And that is a really, really big deal for me, because it used to be that in the best of times, I didn't feel that. It used to be that on my very, very best days, I did not feel hopeful. I don't know that before the age of 21, if that was an emotion that I had ever really felt about my future in my life. But this past year has been filled with so much growth and improvement and so much health that it makes me feel hopeful for what the rest of my life is going to look like. And I'm allowed to feel that hope. And I'm allowed to feel the self-love. And there may be people in the world who don't think that I'm allowed to feel that. And they can think whatever they want. Because I do. I do feel that way. And I can't change the past, but what I can do is work really hard to influence my future. And what I can do is lay down bricks so that going from my 20s into my 30s, I will be a happy, positive influence on the people around me and on myself. Because I'm going to be 24. I'm about to be 24. And that's still young. It's still very young. I know, I'm self-aware about that as well. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm getting closer to 30. Still 6 years, okay? I know. Still 6 years. But it doesn't change the fact that I am getting older. And when I get to 30, which I know it will come so fast, 24 has come so fast. When I get there, I want to look back at my past self and thank him for the position that he's put me in, and not hate him or regret him the way that I have done so many times before with so many versions of myself. It's December 30th, 2023. It's going to be 2024 in a couple days. It'll never be 2023 again. So, time zero marches forward. And that's the only thing that we can do.